I thank everyone for joining us today. My name is Carson Heady. I'm a managing director in the health and life sciences business for Microsoft Healthcare US. I'm also the social selling lead for all of Microsoft Healthcare US. And this is one of those events that my whole life for, where my passion and love for sales is married to what we do here at Microsoft. So thank you first off for joining us today. The session is recorded, so feel free to reach out if you'd like to get a copy of the recording. It'll also be sent out after the fact. Please feel free to use the chat for questions today. This is interactive. I'll nab some questions as we go. First off, I'm going to introduce these illustrious guests of mine. So if you're a fan of selling, these guys need no introduction, but I'm going to do a brief intro anyway. And I'm going to tell you right off. So I was working with our marketing team and we were talking about this event, selling in challenging times, right? And I reached out to two people that I know in the sales ecosystem, these two gentlemen, and they both said yes. They jumped at the opportunity to have this dialogue, and you'll see why they are so relevant in today's challenging times. Throughout this session, if you don't know already. But first off, we've got Mr. Larry Levine, author of and really creator of a movement around selling from the heart, which is all about generating authentic relationships and being genuine amidst selling. Our other illustrious guest is Mr. Paul Reilly, who wrote this book, Selling Through Tough Times. And no time like the present to really visit the importance of authentic relationships, but also what we can learn from history of selling through tough times. So we're going to dive into the wealth of knowledge that these gentlemen bring today. And in the last 20 minutes, we're going to be joined by Chris Stedman. He is a director here at Microsoft in our business productivity suite. And he's going to give an overview of our new Viva Sales, which is an AI-powered collaborative platform that actually enables sales teams to drive revenue growth and customer satisfaction through personalized insights and coaching, plugs and plays with a lot of the tools you guys are using today, be it Dynamics, Salesforce, Outlook, you name it. So really excited about that piece as well. Let's dive right in so that we can get the most out of our time with these two gentlemen today. So first off, Larry Levine, you've created an entire movement around your book and brand's selling from the heart. And for our audience today, what are some key themes from your book that you think are extremely applicable right now?
I think, and by the way, this is awesome. Thanks for having me on, Carson. I've been really, really looking forward to this. And I'm just going to hit this head on. And, selling from the heart, and why I think in the times that we've been through is really important is a couple things. It's all about building authentic relationships and bringing meaningful value to the forefront. And so let's just stop and think just for a moment. I'm just going to key in on the word authentic just for a second, or authenticity. Probably over the last couple years, I'd be surprised if it's not one of the words of the year this year, because it's been used so often in 2021 and 2022. Is selling from the heart's about bringing your authentic self to the forefront. And I think this is what your clients crave. This is what your future clients crave. And when I really look at authenticity, this is what I'd like for people to think about. It's a lifestyle. It's not a light switch. And what I mean by that is, if I just go to the subtitle of my book, How Your Authentic Self Sells You, I believe all the outer success that you all will have and continue to have is based on the inner work that you all do. Authenticity is about looking inward, not looking outward. And I'm not giving you all PhD level stuff on this, because I don't have a PhD in psychology or human behavior. My PhD is from on the street selling copiers in Los Angeles my whole entire career. But what made me me, and what makes you you, is the journey that you go on to uncover what makes you tick, why you do the things that you do, and are you congruent with it? So this is what I'd like for us to think about is in the times that we're selling in right now, I believe it's how well you connect to yourself authentically. I'm going to stop right here. And the reason why I say this is if you struggle to truly connect with yourself authentically, I believe you're going to struggle to connect to your clients authentically. And to me, authenticity, if I summed it up in one word, is about congruency. Does the walk simply match the talk? And that's what I'd like for us to think about in selling in these times that we're selling in. People just want to do business with somebody who's real, somebody who brings the best version of themselves to the forefront. People can sense this, people can smell it. And the radar behind this is sky high. And it's how you carry yourself. It's how you carry yourself in a genuine way. I use the term, Carson, how you lean in. It's how you lean into people, how you engage. It's all about your tonality and your body movement, your eye movement. They can all sense this, and they can smell when somebody's authentic pretty fast, but they can also smell a fake really fast. And so this is my passion around selling from the heart, is to bring authenticity, integrity, and trust back into this very, very, very noble profession of sales.
Powerful. Couldn't have said it better myself, Larry. And I think you exude and embody that each and every day. I think it's so important that we're meeting customers where they are, that we're understanding that they, like us, are humans that have priorities. We need to meet them where they are. And it makes it all the more important that we're showing up, being true to ourselves, understanding what our core priorities are, and showing up with unique perspective and value now more than ever. Paul, I find it fascinating, and you wrote your book, Selling Through Tough Times, and it came out amidst the COVID-19 pandemic. So one might think or assume that the book was about selling in a pandemic, but it isn't. It actually highlighted a number of tough times in history and how salespeople have thrived in them. So let me ask, how should sellers today and sales leaders navigate through these uncertain times?
Yeah, no, great question, Carson. And also thanks for organizing this. It's great to be with you, also with Larry. Love hearing Larry's insights and ideas. So, we think about this when we face tough times, especially whether it's throughout history. Tough times aren't necessarily a bad thing. When we look at top achievers, how they thrive during a tough environment, it begins with the right attitude. All right, so let's think about this for a minute. All right, think of this statement. Tough times are bad. If we were to poll the audience right now and say, okay, how many of you use that statement? That statement describes how you believe as it relates to recessions, as a downturn. And most of us would raise our hand, right? Tough times are bad. That's what we think. Tough times are painful. But if we believe tough times are bad, we're also going to behave in a way that reflects that attitude. We're going to behave in a way that reinforces our belief that tough times are bad. In some ways, we invoke that self-fulfilling prophecy as salespeople. If we think customers are going to be more price sensitive in a tough environment, we're going to look for evidence to support that, and we're more likely to discount. If we believe there's going to be a drop in business activity in a tough time, then we're likely to reduce our own activity to coincide with that. So we behave as we believe. But I believe that tough times aren't bad. In fact, Carson, if you could look at your career, Larry, if you could look at your career as well, you think about the peaks of success that we experience throughout our life. When we really gain traction, we hit those marquee moments. Those moments are often preceded by a deep valley. And in that valley is where you learn. In that valley is where you get motivated. That's where you fail. But through the valley, through the midst of that valley, you're going to reach that new height. So tough times aren't bad. I believe that tough times are good. And when you embrace that attitude that tough times are good, you are opening your eyes to opportunities that nobody else will see but you. Tough times do create new and unique opportunities. Tough times also expose our weaknesses so that we can get stronger. You know, what's interesting, since since the Great Recession, we've been on like an absolute historic economic run where things have been just great. I mean, pandemic obviously setting that aside, but over the past 12 to 13 years, things have been pretty darn good economically speaking. Good economic times will mask bad sales behavior. And during tough times, those weaknesses are exposed, and that enables us to get better. So tough times are good. And when I think about tough times, you know, Carson, I can't help but think of Microsoft. You know, a lot of people don't know Microsoft was founded during a recession. And you have to wonder, all right, if Microsoft would have been founded in a different era when things were easier, would they be where they're at today? Nobody can answer that question, but you have to believe that when you start out in a tough environment and you make it through, you're not only going to become better as a result of it, you're going to hit new heights that maybe you wouldn't have hit otherwise. So tough times are good. And one thing, you know, when we think about sales leaders as they face uncertain times, I'd like to share two practical pieces of advice. Number one, get out in the field more with your team. Get out there and get an unfiltered version of what's going on in your market. It's not enough just to hear it from salespeople. Get out there and talk to your customers and show that support. People want stability in tough times. Leaders in the field equals stability. Not only that, you've got to be a merchant of hope. You've got to be the positive source of information for your customers, for your team. Be that merchant of hope. Tough times are good. That's critical. Let's maintain the right attitude.
Yeah, well said. Well said.
Hey, can I just layer on top? I love what Paul said, and I think there's so much to learn in the valleys. Yeah. There's so much to learn, because when times are really great, sales have just come to a lot of salespeople. And I think these are the times where sales professionals really rise to the top. You've heard the old expression, cream always rises to the top. And this is when we're really going to define, and in Selling from the Heart, I talk about this all the time, the difference between sales reps and sales professionals really occur in those valleys. That's where you're going to really see true professionals from reps. I just had to layer on what you said, Paul. Is amazing.
No, I love that. And Mike posed a great question. I'd love to get a quick answer, Larry, before we proceed. A quick example of connecting with yourself in an authentic way. I think that resonated.
Yeah, no, and thanks, Mike. I'm going to throw a couple things. Is we all have values. So when you connect to yourself, right, and I'll just speak to Mike's question on this, is we all have values. What are your values? What do you stand for? What do you live for? And I'm a big believer the relationship you have with yourself all starts with your values. I'll take this one step farther because it plays on how your authentic self sells you, and connecting to yourself is uncover your why. I'll call it your why operating system, why you do the things you do, how you do them, and what you ultimately bring. This is a great way to connect to yourself. So I'll use an example. I'll use me, if that's okay, Carson, and this will answer your question even more, Mike, is when I really connected to my why and I unpacked this, now I started to realize the things that I'd been doing forever and a day in the sales world. Is my why, is my internal why, is I believe success happens when I contribute to a greater cause. That's my why. How I do this is I do this by making things clear and understandable, because ultimately what I bring are trusting relationships where other people can count on me. That's what I connect to. And I share this because we all have why. We all have a why. It's just unpacking it. But if you really wanted to, you could start there, or you could just start with just grabbing a sheet of paper and grab that sheet of paper and just start writing down what values, what do I value? What do I value in life? What do I value in my professional career? Draw a line there, and then go out and ask some of your Microsoft customers that you know really well. What words would you use to describe me? What value have I been bringing to you? And you'll really just simple things yet so difficult to execute. You'll really start uncovering a lot of this stuff.
Very profound. Great question, Mike. Thank you for throwing that out there in the chat. Paul, as you kind of alluded to, we've collectively on this panel, we've been through a lot of valleys in our sales career, which is one way of saying that we're old. But with that comes the benefit of looking back at some of these valleys and what are the learnings, right? What are the learnings in those valleys? During tough times, it's so important to double down on people and process, get back to the core fundamentals. Your odds and probability of getting a meeting might look different, and the customer priorities look different. Paul, as you mentioned, Microsoft was founded on the principle of getting a PC in every home, right? Obviously, our mission statements changed a little bit over the years, and now it's empowering everyone on the planet to do more. Relationships and resources become all the more important, and the relationships that you can create and nurture during tough times can sustain for the long haul. There's so many interesting ways that we can connect with and interact with customers right now, whether it's helping them create new lines of revenue. Microsoft right now, we're trying to help organizations do more with less. How do we unlock value from what customers already own? How do we enhance holistic investment that we can make? How do we build plans to consolidate costs, replace redundant or disparate competitive solutions? And there's so many ways that we can connect meaningfully and authentically right now, whether it's LinkedIn or leveraging video, building community around what you do, newsletters, webinars like this, and not just hitting people with a lot of random generic email. And so hopefully there's a lot of takeaways that you can all take from today's session. Larry, next question is for you. There's more drive and rigor right now around building pipeline and delivering revenue during tough times because it's harder to come by. I mean, that's the very reason. So it's very counterintuitive. How can sales leaders right now balance that need to drive revenue with the need to build those meaningful, authentic relationships with customers?
I think they both go hand in hand, Carson. And one of my favorite, I stress this all the time and I write about it in Selling from the Heart, is if salespeople and sales leaders want to have an ever-flowing sales funnel, they must build an ever-flowing relationship funnel. They both go hand in hand. And here's what's interesting is, and it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure this one out, is if you look at your deals that are stalled right now, deals that are clogged in the pipeline for some reason, there could be various reasons behind this. I'll submit to you, it goes back to relational depth. Relational depth in the deals you have in the pipeline. So one of the things that I would ask people to look at is double down on relationships. Relationships drive revenue. And you must be doing this every single day. I understand we have to bring revenue into the company on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis, on a quarterly basis. But there's something else that needs to happen. And that means we have to be consistently opening new conversations. We have to consistently be building new relationships. And we have to look at the size of the organizations that we're working with. And we have to ask ourselves internally, how many key decision makers and influencers in these accounts do I know? And how many of these key decision makers and influencers know me? And this is where I believe there's opportunity for monumental growth, is not only who knows you, but what do you know about these people? What are their issues, their challenges, their initiatives, their dreams, their goals, their visions? And then multiply this out through the key executive decision makers and influencers that are sitting in these accounts. So we have to marry, and this is the struggle, I totally get it, is there's a struggle between short-term, right? There's short-term revenue. We got to bring this revenue in right now. But there's also what I call long-term sales sustainability. And you got to learn how to marry both of these together. And that means you have to be radically disciplined and radically consistent with every single day. You're opening new conversations, building upon new relationships, expanding upon existing relationships. I always say the depth and the breadth of your relationships is going to determine your sales success. If you ask any sales leader or any salesperson if relationships are important, if relationships drive sales, everyone is just going to go, yes, they're going to stand up, they're going to raise their hand. But here's my question. What are you doing to build upon, expand upon, nurture, and grow these relationships?
Paul, I'd love to get your thoughts on this one too, because it's super important. And love Larry's response, very relationship driven. And I know you spend a lot of time with sellers and sales leaders. What are your thoughts around this? Obviously we've got to deliver numbers to the business, but we've got to balance that with, creation of relationships with our customers. What say you?
Yeah, relationships are critical. I love when I hear from sales experts that say relationship selling is dead, because our research shows nothing could be further from the truth. In fact, in value-added selling, we did a buying study as part of the new book, and we asked, why would you choose one partner over another? And in both cases, that the relationship with the seller ranked higher, meaning more important than price. So it's not all about price. Relationships are critical. Tough times are opportune times to broaden your relationships and deepen them. Let's talk about broadening those relationships. In a tough economic environment, we know that approvals change, right? So maybe a leader that you worked with in the past could buy up to this level. Well, we know that that level gets pushed down a little in tough times, meaning they don't have the buying authority. So what that means, more people are going to have to get involved in the process. More people get involved, giving you an opportunity to build those relationships. During a deal that you're working on, you may hear, well, we need to kick this up another level. That gives you an opportunity to build that relationship. But not only that, in a tough environment, people don't want to make the wrong decision. Think about some of the customers that you're selling to. As much as they want to make a good decision for their organization, they don't want to be the one that made the wrong decision. Kennedy said that success has many parents and failure is an orphan. That couldn't ring truer during a tough time. So people want strength in numbers to mitigate that risk. Not only that, but, tough times are also an opportunity to deepen your relationships with existing customers. Carson, we use this term to partner so often in business. And I think sometimes it's just flat out overused or misused. Partnering can only really happen when they do become a customer. And partnering is when you build the relationship. And in researching selling through tough times, there's a couple different definitions of partner. The one I found the most intriguing was, it's actually, how a wooden ship works, right? You got a sail. The sail is going to be pushed by the wind, and then that mast is what is attached to the hull of the ship. And basically the wind blows and the ship sails, right? That's how it works. Well, it turns out that there is a structure on a ship that holds the mast in place. And that wooden piece is actually called a partner. Now you think about that, when the sea is stormy and the winds are howling, that's when the partner becomes even more critical. And the same is true during tough times. With your customers, during tough times, they count on you more than before. And so tough times, again, do create opportunities to broaden those relationships, but deepen them as well with our existing customers.
So one thing I'm hearing in talking with both of you here today, and there's been a couple of great questions in the chat. I'm going to broach those here in a second. It's not about having knee-jerk reactions from spreadsheet management. It's about investing in relationships. And by no means am I suggesting we don't look at the data, right? We have data that's telling us very actionable things that help us from a process perspective. But we need to use that data, and we need to use all the knowledge that's at our fingertips in order to diagnose and to figure out, how do we show up with unique perspective right now and show value to our customers when it looks very different than it did a year or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 ago. We also can't pay lip service to the word partnership. I like how, Paul, you really finely articulated that. I look at some of the biggest deals that I've been a part of over the last several years, and rife with C-level changes. So, there's a lot of changing ecosystem, people that are leaving that are high-level influencers. You can't bank on just having 1 or 2 or 5 relationships within a customer organization where you want to do business today. You also, Paul, to your point, you've got to de-risk that decision for the customer. We have to do everything we can to de-risk that decision. That doesn't mean discount. It means find ways to help them make the right decision based on where you can show time to value and return on investment. And then Larry, you were talking about depth of understanding, really sitting in it with them. I'm a big believer, and Bill, you put this great question in there, like who should we as sellers be connecting with? In my mind, you got to create a groundswell. I remember years ago, and Prasad, you made a great comment in the chat. Great to see you, my friend. Years ago, I would always hear of the challenge from our leadership was that, at Microsoft, we had traditionally done well creating relationships in IT and procurement, but we did not show up as effectively with what we call the other rooms of the house, so the other lines of business. So years ago, my background was not in technology. It was in telecommunications and advertising. I came in and I just started trying to build community around what we did here. And I realized a lot of these executives were on LinkedIn. So I went out, tried to create a conversation and figure out how we could show up with value, not about trying to sell anything, but how do we infuse new life and value into what you already own? Because a lot of times Microsoft is a significant investment for a lot of our customer organizations. And so that helped me forge a relationship. I got to earn my keep. I got to earn the right to be a trusted advisor. And that's the mentality that we've got to take. Solve problems, build a groundswell, look at some of these rooms of the house where you can add value. And I would reckon that it would be a lot of rooms of the house where you can add value if you really start to think about it.
Hey, Carson, excuse me? I just want to play off of what you just said, because
Please.
We're talking a lot about relationships. But here's where I want to take this, because you brought up value and it just triggered something. That's just I firmly believe there's 2 sides to the trust coin. And I want us to key in on this as sellers. So we all know where trust and credibility sits in the sales world right now. Unfortunately, it's extremely low. And if we can all buy into the concept that relationships do sell, relationships do drive revenue, then here's what I want us to think about. We have to bring this 2-headed approach to this. You must build authentic relationships, and you have to bring meaningful business value to your customers as a seller. And you can't do one without the other, because if all we focus on as salespeople is to build genuine, authentic relationships, if we're not bringing in business substance and business goods and business value into this, we as sellers have a lot of friends and we get caught in the friend zone. And so we have to be able to marry these things together. And if we don't, I believe it's going to be hard to even sell in tough times. Is we got to lean in these relationships, but in order to lean in these relationships, we got to bring substance to it. And that's what I believe our customers or our clients are looking for. They're looking for that genuine, authentic seller who's going to bring meaningful business value to help them become even better than they are right now.
I love that. It's all about, Larry, not paying lip service to the partnership. We've, even here with my team, we often look at where we have maybe not had as strong a partnership with organizations that we've wanted to. How do we breathe new life into that? How do we show up different, learn from where it didn't work before? We've got to do that right now more than ever. I want to get to Prasad's question here, but I also want to ask this other one and get both Paul's first and then Larry's thoughts, because it's so important right now for sales leaders. And then we'll round up with Prasad's question, because it's an important one as well. Paul, give us some best practices for sales teams right now to stay motivated and productive during uncertain economic times, time where travel may look different, might be restricted, budgets look very different. It's a strange time for sellers right now. How do we stay motivated? How do we stay connected? And how can leaders support their teams best through these challenges? I'd love to hear from both of you, starting with Paul.
Yeah. Right now, I think it's also important to acknowledge that we have a group of salespeople and leaders that are experiencing a tough time for the first time in some sense, right? They've yet to experience a recession. So there's a few things we need to remember. First and foremost, let's remember that tough times are relative. They're relative to our own experiences, not the experiences of other people. This is especially important for sales leaders, because if you're a sales leader with 30 plus years of experience who has sold through several recessions, through inflationary times, you've experienced a lot of tough times in your career. Each time you experience one, it helps build a foundation in which you can navigate the next tough time with greater ease. The younger salespeople that you're managing and leading, this may be the first time. So they have yet to experience the tough times. They've yet to build that foundation. So we need to be aware of that. And we need to make sure that we are mentoring and not saying, oh, well, let's just gut it out, just stick through it. No, we need to mentor and lead these individuals compassionately through a tough time. But also keep in mind, tough times are temporary. They're not going to last. In fact, since the Great Depression, the average recession lasts about 10 months, while the average expansion lasts about 60 months. So by the time we're in a tough time, we're almost out of it. So they don't last forever, but neither do the opportunities that they present. So keep that in mind. Also, with tough times, the big challenge we face is it's just a lack of control. So we got to focus on those things that we can control. From a tactical standpoint, just going out there, boots on the ground, number one, we've got to increase our activity level. There's a purchasing manager study that showed salespeople reduce their selling activity by 38% during tough times. So that means if you're making 100 sales calls during a tough time, you're going to make 62. Well, instead of decreasing our activity, let's not only maintain it, but increase it. If you can increase your activity by 25%, you're now making 125 calls, whereas your competition is making 62. You are effectively doubling your coverage vis-a-vis the competition. And although you might not win a sale every single time, you're capturing their attention. You're capturing what I call mind share. And that tough times mind share turns into good times market share. So now is the time to position yourself. Increase that activity, and while you're doing that, remain hyper-focused on good business. Hyper-focused. During tough times, standards get lower for what is good business. We get a little desperate. Here's what I equate this, when I met my wife, Lauren, the only reason that we met is because she lowered her standards enough in order to give me a shot. I guess it worked out in my favor then. But
hey, that was good, Paul.
Well done.
I'm thankful every day for that. But when it comes to how we spend our time, we have to maintain those high standards. During tough times, we get desperate, though. We think that opportunities are scarce, so we're willing to take on anything. Remain hyper-focused. I'd love to hear Larry's thoughts too.
No, and I love what you said about staying hyper-focused. This is times where leaders and managers could coach all throughout their whole sales team, whether you're a tenured person or whether you've just started. This is the time to double down back on basics. Mm-hmm. Because I think what happens is in tough times, everyone will start freaking out. But in tough times, if you can double down and do all the things that got you to where you're at, watch what starts to happen. Good coaches, good mentors are going to do this. It just, we're all sports people on this call. So sorry, I'm going to just bring up a sports analogy. It's no different than when sales teams go through horrific slumps season over season. They're still doing the basics. They just have to coach their talent in different ways. So great coaches and great mentors are going to coach their people through the valleys, because they've been there. But the younger sellers who haven't experienced this, it's actually going to make them tougher. Because the next time it happens, and it will, they're going to be prepared for it. But this goes back to discipline. This goes back to consistency. Because I think a lot of times what happens is in tough times, like Paul had said, we may take on some clients that we shouldn't have taken on before. But if we flip this on its head and we uncover who are our ideal clients, who are we going to prospect, who are we going to engage in these conversations with, and we do it every single day, even during the valleys, we're going to become that much better.
It's truly powerful. Couple of thoughts, and I'm going to try to give each of our guest speakers another minute or so with some final thoughts. But, team, we're in a sales crucible right now, and now is the time for creativity and brand building, controlling the controllables, leaving no stone unturned, and going down swinging. And frankly, looking for every opportunity to invest in relationships. I got to tell you, I've never worried about a sales number in my entire career. I've always really intensely focused on creating and nurturing relationships and executing process. That's it. Prasad, you asked a great question that I do want to broach. There's a lot of inconsistencies in sales, right? You get a new book of business frequently, or whatever that looks like, right? I've learned to kind of gamify sales. You really look at, what are the key relationships that I'm going to need to get done what I need to get done, and what's the message that's going to resonate with these folks, and how can I find ways to create a conversation, but also meet them where they are from a value perspective, and doing that time and time again. That's why I adopted social selling so many years ago, finding ways to stay top of mind. You're not going to necessarily get someone to answer your first call, your second call. It's probably going to be closer to your fifth or eighth. And as Paul pointed out, now's the time to really be resilient and up your numbers of calls and contacts and touches, while everybody else, your competition, is decreasing theirs. One of the biggest deals that I've been a part of over the last few years was amidst the pandemic. And actually, it was a customer that wasn't even thinking about us. But I showed up at the right time, met them on LinkedIn, got in their office, gave them a copy of my CEO's book, highlighted some passages about our transformation, and started talking about some of the resources that we could bring to bear. And they went through a lot of changes, as did we during that time. But we made sweet music happen because of investing in the relationship. We've got a couple minutes till we're going to hand it to Chris. So I'm going to start with Paul. One more minute of any wrap up, and then we'll go to Larry, and then we're going to hand it to my friend Chris Stedman. So Paul, bring us home.
Yeah, one final thought. I want to leave everyone with something very tactical and practical that's going to help them. In selling through tough times, we talk about stretching the buyer's time horizon. We want to do this in two ways in tough times. First of all, you want to get your buyer thinking into the future, because in the future, buyers focus on the outcomes that they're going to receive, and they're not focusing in the present, which is where they're going to focus on what they must sacrifice. All right. So get them thinking into the future, but we also want to go back and revisit the past. Remember, in the present moment, there's a lot of uncertainty. We can look to the past for assurance so that they know, hey, this tough time isn't going to last. In fact, many of your customers, you could stretch them back to the Great Recession of 08 and 09 and say, wow, your business has grown immensely since then. What were some of the strategic decisions you made in 08 and 09 to position you to be where you're at today? All right, now knowing that, Mr. Customer, how can we apply some of those same ideas right now to position you for the next uptick? All right, get them thinking backwards. Backwards is going to help give them assurance. Thinking forward focuses on outcomes. Either way, get them out of the present moment, because they're going to focus on price and uncertainty.
I love that, Paul. This tough time is not going to last. That's exactly what my financial advisor keeps telling me too. So I'm a big believer in that. Russ asked an awesome question, and I'm going to use that as I transition to Larry's final thoughts. Russ asked about creating genuine virtual relationships when we can't travel, when we can't see people in person. Larry Levine's a great example of that. Larry and I have talked probably a dozen times in the last year plus. We've known each other for years, but we've never physically met in person. We've tried to make it work, hasn't yet, but I know it will. But the answer is yes. And you know what's amazing to me? As I look at selling, compare and contrast from today to 5-10 years ago, and it's amazing what we can do with technology. I mean, I can be talking to an executive, and if I was in person with them 5 years ago and I needed to introduce a new person on my team, I might have to schedule a whole new meeting 2-3 weeks down the road, and then that might even get rescheduled. Now I can press a button if my colleague is available and add them into the meeting immediately. Let's look at how we can use these tools and resources to make ourselves better as sellers. Larry, it's always awesome to see you, hear from you, talk to you. Give us your final thoughts.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate it. This has been great, and hopefully the people that have been viewing this have grabbed some nuggets from this. I want to play off of this. Can you build relationships virtually? And I'll end with this: is yes, 100% you can. I believe it's a mindset issue for sellers. Total 100% mindset is just because I can't physically shake Carson's hand or I can't physically shake Paul's hand. By the way, Paul and I have never met. And
Yeah.
we've developed a good relationship. And again, we have to get used to this. This isn't going away. This is not going away. Relationships now can be built in many different facets. And I'm an old school guy, right? I started before the internet, so I've just dated myself. Relationships were built face to face on handshakes. Now relationships are built virtually. They're built socially. They're built face to face. We have to marry all of this together, and it's how we carry ourselves. And I remember, and I'll leave you with this. This goes back to my very first business coach at 40 years old, who said, Larry, and this goes back 18 and a half years ago. So now y'all know I'm 58 and a half years old. Is this? He goes, you need to understand how to play in the online sandbox. The same thing that you're doing face to face, you must be able to do online. Again, this absolutely 100% goes back to, it's a mindset thing. 100%. If you don't believe that you can't build a relationship virtually, guess what, people? You won't. If you believe you can, you will. I'll leave you with one word. It's intentionality. Be intentional in how you communicate and how you connect, and watch what happens.
Wow. Intentionality, and talk about mindset. I'm a small town kid from the Midwest US with zero technology background before coming to Microsoft, and I get to work amongst the best of the best. So, be sure to apply that to whatever it is you're selling today. Build community, build genuine relationships, and be resourceful. And you can be successful in challenging and uncertain times. Chris Stedman, I'm going to turn it to you, my friend. Take us home and showcase Viva Sales.
Yes, thanks so much. I'll take over the share real quick just to make it easier. So really great session. Thanks to all three of you. Really took a lot of nuggets. And not only that, the conversation in the chat with a variety of clearly very professional and experienced salespeople has been really a great kind of ability to just have us talk about some of the things. So a lot of what we want to talk about in the next 10 minutes is just showcasing you how Microsoft is trying to approach some of the challenges that salespeople encounter and how our solutions might help us get through that. So you might have heard about Viva Sales. This is one of the newest products in the Microsoft family, and it embraces that name of Viva, which is all about addressing the employee experience. And Viva Sales is specific for salespeople. So we took a look at how some problems arise and how we might solve those things. It's interesting. Sellers tell you that the technology they need to get the job done is critical. It's crucial. They even say, hey, the data you put into CRM for me or what you give me in my tools, that definitely helps me get the deal done. But for some reason, we've left salespeople behind in how we do our job, right? We give them a CRM, but every one of us on the call is a salesperson. None of us spend our day in CRM. Most statistics and research shows that a salesperson spends 10% or less of their work week in CRM. So we have a problem, right? You have a CRM, that's your system of record, and then you have the systems of productivity like Outlook and Teams. This is where you talk to your customers and your teammates. This is where the job gets done. This is how we get sales to advance and get through. And these systems don't talk to each other. So what inevitably ends up happening is that I, as a seller, have to stop what I'm doing in my Outlook and Teams, swivel chair over to my CRM, and do manual data entry or dig for data. Now, when those things happen, it's a real problem. We know that switching windows and applications can drop productivity by 40 to 60% or more. And that can take 15 to 25 minutes to get back into that task or back into that flow of work. It'll happen all the time. We'll get off of this meeting right now, and Carson will have an IM message for me on Teams. So I'll stop what I'm doing, and I'll answer Carson and say, hey, yeah, I can help with that. Well, now I'm out of the flow of work. So this constant application switching and manual data entry is causing me to not sell enough. And this stat at the bottom of the screen here, most sellers spend 32% of their time on selling, and it's actually 32% or less, depending on your organization and your processes. Now, if we went to accountants and said, hey, it'd be great if you only spent a third of your work week crunching the numbers, or doctors and said, hey, if you could make sure you limit your time in front of patients to 30% of your week, there would be outrage in the streets. We wouldn't settle for it. But for salespeople, it's kind of like, well, you got to do that. That's the nature of the beast. Well, it's time for us to change that. So we've introduced Microsoft Viva Sales. This is specifically about the salesperson experience. And this is a way that Microsoft can take its best-in-class technologies and make those systems work together without a lot of difficult tech lifting or technical work. And what we're trying to do is help use the systems of productivity that you already own, know, use, and love today, like Teams and Outlook, and tie them in more efficiently and effectively with that system of record or your CRM. Viva Sales is about eliminating the manual data entry and keeping CRM data better, more robust, up to date, so that we can provide better insights. So now sellers can take Viva Sales and use it to automatically capture new customers into a CRM, or track an email or meeting as an activity on an opportunity. Not only does this make them more productive by limiting the amount of time they have to manually enter these things, which often shows up as not entering them at all, but it also helps round out that customer engagement data set. So sales ops leaders can understand what leads to more wins or what causes more losses. New sellers can get up to speed faster because we're actually capturing the important things around customers and opportunities. Then, as I'm engaging with my customers, we can pull that data back out of CRM and give it to me in the tool I'm already using, in the flow of work while I'm working with that customer. So real-time data instead of digging and delaying and getting back to them tomorrow, right? So, and then we offer some of our best in the world AI to help sales managers coach at scale. And you heard our guest speakers talk today about opportunities for coaching. And so we want to provide some of our capabilities in AI to make that easier for sales leaders. So let's take a look at how Viva Sales kind of comes to life. We know we all start our day in Outlook. 90% of the professional world starts their day by opening up Outlook and seeing what's going on. If I have an email from my customer, I can actually automatically create this as a new customer in my CRM, Salesforce, or Dynamics. And it'll even prompt me to say there are people on this email thread that are not in your CRM system. It helps us get better data in right away, and the system's helping us to have better insights and data into the system. I can tag and record ambient information. To Prasad's question about how do you build relationships, we can actually enter a note here that stays with this record, so anytime I'm in Outlook, I can reference that note. Maybe he went on vacation, or maybe they have been ill. And I can check back in on things not related to the actual opportunity that do help us build those relationships. I can also say, hey, this email is important to an opportunity I'm working on. I want to track it back to that opportunity. And I can do that with a click of a button without having to go to CRM. So I spend my first half hour in Outlook and I'm logging activities. I'm capturing customer data. I'm creating new customers. Additionally, I'm getting better data back from CRM, and I'm still in Outlook. We're seeing maximum productivity increases here. I can see a history of interactions and documents that I've already sent to this customer, so I know where they're at in the sales journey, and I don't have to waste time learning that. I can tailor my message to where they're at in the buying process. I can see the opportunity details and get an intelligent read on that account and opportunity, and I can quickly access in-depth information like other activities we've already accomplished with this customer or opportunity. When it's time for me to engage with a customer, you know, a lot of times, many of you might be familiar with an organization called Inside Sales. They do a lot of research and data on salespeople. They say it takes on average 7.5 to 10 minutes to enter in notes from a sales call. The truth is, if that's what we're focused on as sellers, we're not actively listening. We're thinking about what we need to jot down as a note. We're thinking about how we want to respond or go track down what they asked us for. And then more than likely, I'm actually not getting those notes into CRM. Well, using Viva Sales, we can transcribe that meeting and push those notes quickly and easily into CRM. So now I'm not worried about capturing things. I'm actively listening to that customer and addressing their needs. I'm being genuine because I'm engaged in the conversation. Also allows me to use our best in the world AI to say, hey, here's where we mentioned a competitor, or here's where they asked for a discount. And I can find those important notes. So we're not just pushing a full transcription into CRM, which wouldn't be beneficial for most people because we don't want to read paragraphs and paragraphs, but we can provide those instant summaries. I can translate these things, and then I can attach these call notes to the appropriate CRM record, which is great for not only keeping me up to speed because I probably have too many customers and accounts to be able to support fully over time. I'll need those reminders, but new sellers coming on and supporting new customers also get that timely input and the important things we need to focus on. After a meeting, I can easily collaborate with my teammates, and I don't have to stop what I'm doing, go into CRM, dig up important details. I simply @mention the customer record in a Teams chat, and it'll pull that data in. Now my teammates can all collaborate much more easily. I can get a deal unblocked or approved. I can use a subject matter expert and get good guidance and best practices on how to win that deal better. And then without having to go to CRM and pull that data up, I can do this more efficiently. I'm saving a lot of minutes here, gang. And if I can save every seller 20 to 30 minutes a day, does that give them an extra hour or hour and a half every week to engage one more customer? And if every seller in our organization engages one more customer per week, does it give us one more sale per seller per month? Well, that's significant revenue growth, especially in the challenging times that you heard Paul and Carson talk about, right? And finally, I can do conversation intelligence. This is one of our fantastic offerings from our dynamic sales suite, and we've taken a portion of it and put it into Viva Sales. This allows our transcription to say, hey, you said follow-up call next week. Does that need to be a task in CRM? Or do you want me to create that as a follow-up task? And I don't have to go in, create a task. This is click of a button stuff. But we talked a lot about coaching at scale. And so what I really think is important is giving sales leaders the ability to listen in on conversations, even if they can't be there. When I was doing live sales and sales coaching, it was jacking into a phone or riding along or sitting next to a seller. That's uncomfortable, and you don't always see the seller at their best. And I have to figure out a schedule that works for me. With this, I can listen to a phone call on my lunch break and say, hey, did you hear where Danny said, hey, we think there's a lot of value here. We know we're solving your pain points. We think you're asking a fair price. And now we can say, hey, Danny really handled price objection on this. Let's see how everyone can incorporate that type of philosophy into their talk track. And if I can coach out pricing discussions a little more effectively at scale, then we're protecting margin. And as a salesperson, Danny can come back and self-assess herself on this. Hey, do I have good talk to listen ratio? How did I handle the comment about checking out a competitor? And then we can use those things to improve and self-improve, but then again, giving the capability to our sales managers to scale out the best practice in coaching. And of course, the most exciting thing, what I'm sure you've all heard of, is that we're using generative AI today in Viva Sales. It's in preview right now, and we're going general availability on March 15th. This is a great way to use artificial intelligence to help us craft very appropriate and well-worded emails. It uses that generative AI model to prompt a response. I see an email. Any updates on the new toaster lineup? and I can reply to an inquiry if they said, hey, I'll order those today if you can give me a better deal. So then I can offer a discount. As it's doing that, it actually looks back into my CRM and the products on the opportunity and says, I see that this is for toaster line, 20 units of this toaster. Here's a price. And it helps me word those things, right? And what it does is it uses really good language, but it uses those data points. So it's scouring for how to best craft that. And I don't have to sit down and say, okay, how do I want to word this appropriately? So it gives me the suggestion, and then I can enter that and put it in. So if I want to change any of this, I can quickly and easily edit it to say, I wouldn't say regards, Aaron Bjork. I'd say, hey, let me know what you think about this and what questions you have. Speak to you soon, Chris, right? And so now I'm personalizing on top of that best practice. So this is an exciting time for us. People love this, this ChatGPT thing. This is not going to OpenAI or ChatGPT, so your data is still secure and covered by all the trust and security promises that Microsoft makes on all the products and data that you use with us today already. We've simply brought that model into our Azure instances to use that. Really a lot of value here. Again, how do we make sellers more productive? And what we saw today is that, you know, our guest speakers talked a lot about following process, using the tools that are available. Our mission here at Microsoft is to make that easier, to make the tools work for sellers. Sellers have said, it's great, I love these tools, but it's a real clunky manual process. Well, we can speed that up, and we can help eliminate that manual data entry to make sellers more productive and efficient. It's far too special of a skill set to ask them to do manual data entry like create a customer in CRM. It's 2023. I think we can do better for them. And then, of course, our inability to capture important customer data like healthcare patient and HCP and patient and customer engagement data. We want the systems to help inform that. And if we're going to use AI, we need better customer engagement data sets. So with the push of a button, Viva Sales helps us round out that customer engagement data set and ecosystem. We make it easier for sellers to attach the important notes and activities to opportunities so we can architect better win strategies. And of course, we use some of our best in the world AI to help sellers have better sales conversations and improve the communication they have, all while being more productive and efficient. So on behalf of all of our guest speakers and on behalf of Microsoft, I want to thank you guys for your time today. Thanks for engaging with us. Thanks for being a part of a phenomenal sales culture that's coming back. And please feel free to reach out to us to learn more about Viva Sales. Carson?
Well said, Chris. Thank you. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Larry. This was tremendous. I mean, probably the most excited I've ever been for a Microsoft event. Really enjoyed the chat, both the conversation with our esteemed guests, but also all the questions and comments that we were provided. So thank you for that. As I mentioned at the onset of this, the session was recorded. We'll be sending out the copy of the recording. Feel free to reach out to me if you have any follow-up questions, want to meet our guests, check them out on LinkedIn. I know Danny posted in the chat some of the links to their material, which I personally highly recommend. And we look forward to seeing you next time. If you have any questions on Viva Sales, let us know. Happy to set up a personalized discussion and demonstration. And until next time, all the best. Keep on selling through these tough times. Thank you.